Hey guys, welcome back. In the last lecture, we separated both upcoming and past workshops using scopes. In this lecture, we will add one more basic but very important feature to our course project, and that is introducing slug and replace them with ID in the URL. Okay, so far when we go to the details page of the workshop, we need to pass ID as the argument into the URL as params. Then your controller acts to find the workshop with provided ID from the database. Okay, so let me click on the view details. So here you can see that I clicked on the detail page and I can see the ID one in the URL, okay, as an argument. Okay, and this ID passed as a params to the workshop controller. Okay, so let me open the workshop controller here. Okay, into the workshop controller you receive this argument, and then controller find that particular workshop from the database. Okay, this flow is fine in all sense, but sending numeric ID of the active record objects directly into the request does not seem to be a good practice. Okay, so to improve this practice, we can pass unique attributes of an active record object as slug in the request, and then the controller can use this slug id to find the object from the database. And to do this, we are going to use a gem friendly id in our course project. And after adding this gem and making required changes, we don't have to pass numeric ids into the url to find workshop from the database. Okay, so let's start with this. Okay, so open a new tab in the browser, okay, and search for the friendly id gem. Okay, so when you search for this friendly IDGem, you can open the code repository of or the GitHub repository of the friendly IDGem, and it will open looks like this. And here you can see that what you will see in your URL after adding the friendly IDGem. Okay, so as an example here, you can see that before adding the friendly ID, you could have URL like this. So you are passing the ID of the state into the URL, but after adding the friendly id gem into your project, you don't have to expose your primary key of your active record object. Instead, you can just provide the string argument as a params here. Okay, so now we need to follow the installation instruction for adding friendly idgm into our application. Okay, so go to the usage and copy this line gem friendly id and paste it into the gem file of your application. Okay, so open the gem file. Okay, and come to the bottom, and here let's paste this and save this and run the bundle install. Okay, so here the server is running, so let's run bundle install here. Okay, close the server and run the bundle install. After installing the bundle, we need to add the slug attribute into our workshop model. Okay, so generate a migration to add the slug to the workshop. And you can also see this step at the James documentation as well. Okay, so here we also need to add the slug attribute using a migration into our active record model, whatever the model we can prefer. Like for example, if we want, we can add slug for customer as well, but we are trying to add a slug for the workshop, so we will add it to workshop. Okay, so let's generate the migration at our end. So rails g migration, okay, and add slug to workshops. Okay, and here you can add slug then unique. Okay, this unique will add a unique index to the workshop table for the slug attribute. Okay, and you can see the migration has been generated. So now what we need to do, that we need to run this migration. So rails db migrate. And when you run this migration, you will see this slug attribute into your workshop model. Okay, so open the schema. Okay, and after opening the schema, you can see that this migration has added this slug attribute into your workshop table. Okay, now after doing this step, we also need to generate the configuration for friendly id gems. So to do that, we need to run the command to add the configuration files for friendly id. Okay, so we need to run this command rails g friendly id or rails generate friendly id. Okay, so go to the terminal and paste this command. Okay, and this will create a migration for creating the friendly id slugs table into your schema, and an initializer file to manage the configuration for friendly id. Okay, now you need to run the migration. Okay, so else db migrate. Now let's open your schema.rb and look at the table friendly id slugs. Okay, so you can see this table is in your schema.rb now, and this is a polymorphic table, and it means you can use the slug attribute in any of your active record model. Okay, like your model name could be anything. You can just you however, you don't need to specify this relationship in all your active record models, but you can see that sluggable type and sluggable id, these are the true attributes, and by which we can know that this is the polymorphic table, and we can use slug attribute for any active record model in our application. Okay, now we just need to extend friendly ID in our active record model. So since we are using this slug for workshop model, so open the workshop model. Okay, and in this workshop.rb, what we need to do, that we need to extend the friendly id and mention that what attributes we want to make a slug for our model. Okay, so go to the games documentation, and here you can see that it has created slug for username, but we are creating slug for workshop name. Okay, so we can copy the same thing. Okay, just copy this and paste it into the workshop model. Okay, now, what this will do, that this will include the friendly ID table and allow you to generate a slug for your active record model using friendly ID table. And this friendly ID requires an argument that is the name of your active record model. That for that you want to generate slug. Okay, this could be full name as well. This could be description as well. But making slug for description does not make sense because description might have been paragraphs as well. So let's keep it the shorten string for that. Okay, but it should be unique argument of your or unique attribute of your model. Okay, and that will be good. So here you can see friendly id name used as slug. Okay, now as the last step, you just need to change the way you make query to find a workshop. Okay, so let's open the workshop controller. Okay, here you can see that we usually run find query like this, like workshop.model or our model name dot find and then params id. Okay, here what we need to change after installing the friendly id, that we need to add workshop dot friendly dot find. Okay, and this will test the slug argument to find the workshop. Okay, however, still you can provide numeric id to this query as well, and it will be working properly. But since we are using slugs now, so we can use friendly dot find params id here. Okay, save this, and that's it. This is all the setup we require to run the we require to run the friendly id in our application. But hold on, we set up everything to work with friendly slug, but we don't have slug in our existing workshop so far. Okay, so what we need to do, that we need to first generate the slug for all the existing workshop in our database. Okay, so open the rails console and run the command to generate slug for all existing workshop. Okay, so Rails console. Okay, and in this Rails console, what we need to do, that we need to find each workshop and then we need to execute save query. Okay, so workshop dot find each, and here ampersand column save. Okay, and when you run this command, you can see that all workshops has been updated with some slug. Okay, and you can verify your workshops that whether the slugs are generated for those or not. You can run this query workshop dot plug. Okay, and then provide name and then slug. So here you can see that every workshop name is now have slug. Okay, so we verified that we generated slug for all existing workshops, and we see that every workshop has a slug now. Okay, now it's time to test this feature in the browser. So open the workshops index page and click on the view detail page of any workshop. Okay, so let's switch to the browser. Okay, and here you can see that, just remove this id. Okay, first we need to start the server, so let's exit from the console and start the server. Okay, so, and after starting the server, let's refresh the browser. Okay, and here you can see the workshop index page. Okay, and now when you click on any workshops detail page, you can see that is still the same detail page of the workshop, but now in the browser you can see the string argument or id as the string or primary key as the string. So we are not passing a numeric id here. Okay, and this is the safer way to send it into request, and you can do the same thing for all the request, like for edit, delete, update, and for all the member action wherever you require the id of the active record instance in the request to identify. So you can use slug there. Okay, and this way you can make your request very safe. Okay, so far, what we did that we tried generating slug for existing record, and we see how we can see that. Okay, now it's time to check the slug generation while creating a new workshop. Okay, so switch to the Rails console and we will try creating a workshop there. Okay, so first let's come to the seeds file. Okay, because we will copy the existing code for creating a workshop. So open your seeds file. Okay, and into this seeds file copy this last workshops attribute. Okay, and what we can do here that we can use these workshops as workshop.create and just pass these argument here. Okay, correct the indentation, and since we have a uniqueness validation on the workshop title, so we can add it like, let's say, building real world apps with modern rails. Okay, because this title is unique. So title for the modern rails, and title for the workshop must be unique. Okay, so just copy this workshop create. Okay, let's cut this, not copy, because we now need this after this example. Okay, and into the new terminal tab open the Rails console. Okay, and in this Rails console we can paste this query. Okay, so just paste it and run the create command. Okay, and here you can see that when you created a new workshop, the slug has been generated automatically. Okay, and you can verify this on console as well as on browser as well. Okay, so switch to the workshops index page, and here you can see that okay, so that might be in the past workshop. So let's switch to the index page or landing page of your application, and here you can see that this workshop is created in the past. Okay, but when you click on this, you can still see the URL into the sorry, string parameter into the URL. Okay, or the slugged parameter into the URL. Okay, and that's it. And after following this lecture, you will learn how and when to replace numeric ID from your request using friendly ID gem. Okay, and so using this gem is very simple, but it is widely used in various Rails application, and you might asked to implement this feature in a project you working on. Okay, so that time you can use this gem. Okay, now let me show you a real world example that where we can use these IDs. So here you can see that like we are providing friendly id here, we are not providing the id or primary key of this repository. Okay, and now let's click on this pull request tab as well, and when you click on this pull request, okay, so here you can see that you are seeing the id of this pull request. Okay, but if you see these pull request on the bit bucket, then you will see the title of the pull request as the argument. Okay, not the primary key of the pull request. Okay, and now let me show you some other examples as well. So you can click on the eventbrite.com. Okay, and here you will also see that this site also do not use the primary key of the events. Okay, so here you can see that popular in Vadodara. Let's click on this event. Okay, and when this events load, you can see that there is some string argument into the browser to find this workshop. Okay, instead of numeric id. Okay, so in real world sense, what we can say that we must avoid passing the numeric id or the primary key of the id into the url, because exposing the primary key of an object does not make sense to the public user. Okay, and it might break the security of your application as well, and resulting you can have many vulnerabilities breaking for your skill. Okay, so that's all from this lecture, and let's give this a try at your end. Thanks for watching this, and let's meet into the next lecture with another enhancement into our course project. Till then, tata, goodbye, take care, and stay safe.